We're on now, Terry. You're good to go.
Thank you, Nicole. Welcome to our meeting tonight. It's our call to order. It is 7:01 for our meeting, and so welcome. I would ask that you take a look at our agenda, and if there's any additions to it, just please raise your hand or speak right out. There is one alteration to the agenda. Would you please, in your own agenda in front of you, remove the in-camera session number 13. We will not be going in camera this evening. We need approval for the agenda this evening. Can I have somebody give me present a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, John. Seconder?
I can second it. Shirley?
All in favor, just say yes.
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 Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interests. Are there any conflicts that anybody has to bring forward this evening? Thank you. The approval of the minutes from June 8th, if you'd like to take a moment to have a look at them, and if there's any changes or amendments we have to make to those minutes before we go forward and pass a motion to approve them. I caught one, Ellen. Under section 8, we repeated both section 8 and 8.1. They both state the same thing. So we could just, I recommend that we just remove one of the statements. Any other changes? Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes of June 8th, 2021.
I'll make that motion.
Seconder?
I'll second that, Leanne.
Thank you, Leanne. All in favor, say yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank
Yes,
you.
please.
Yes, please. Business arising from the previous minutes. The only thing I wanted to bring forward, Leanne had passed a motion 2 meetings ago that we bring forward the condition of our building and where we're going with it. Because tonight was a I don't want to say a special meeting, but a different type of meeting than our regularly scheduled meetings. I did not invite Jeff tonight. So we will discuss that at the September meeting. So just for your own information. Correspondence. First piece of correspondence, 6.1. I'll turn over to Ellen and ask Ellen to share that portion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we were mailed our new Ontario Library Services Strategic Plan, and I've presented it here just kind of for your information. It is that body, just a reminder that it combined the Southern and Northern Ontario Library Services into one earlier this year. And they had been working on this. So kind of sets the motion and the tone for Ontario libraries going forward. But it's just presented here for information.
Any questions in regards to the Ontario Library Services Strategic Plan for Ellen? Okay. At the same time, I had a look at the strategic plan. I thought it was quite interesting because today Ellen and I, we had talked at the last meeting about our own strategic plan, and it gives us something to begin to think about there. We have one other piece of correspondence, and it is from the Ontario Library System as well. It invites all library board members to attend a conference on Tuesday, September 21st. It's an online conference. It goes from 10 a.m. in the morning to 4 p.m. So if you're interested, please let me know. We can certainly register any of our board members or even our employees if they're interested in attending the session. And the session is about rethinking what your library is today. So that's just for your information. I'm sure Becky would have shared that with you if she was here tonight. Next piece of business is our summer programming, and we're fortunate tonight. It's like It's like kindergarten where you have the children bring something to share. We're fortunate to have one of our North Perth employees, Alish. She's coming to share about the summer programming. So Alish, I'll turn it over to you at this point. Alish, sorry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ailish Brennan, and I have been working through the North Perth Public Library this summer, which has been amazing. So fun. We've had a great success with the program, so I'm just kind of here to talk a little bit about what that looked like translated to remote learning. So I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. So I am going into my third year at Queen's University in global development with a minor in Indigenous Studies. And I've lived in Listowel my whole life, and I've attended the programs at the library when I was a little kid. So I was super excited to have the opportunity to work there this summer. I don't know if there's, we can move to the next slide, I think. Awesome. So first I'll talk a little bit about how the programs work. So I was working at the library for 10 weeks and the programs ran for 8 weeks. So each week I would pick a different theme that the kits would be based around. I would find a combination of crafts that would fit with the theme, and then I would prepare these take and make kits. So in an in-person year, we would have kids come into the library and they would do these activities with us. Similarly, there would be a theme that they would kind of follow and it would go throughout the week. There'd be multiple activities through the day. Obviously, that doesn't directly translate to a remote program. So we had to come up with a little way to like tweak that and make it a little more accessible online. So this is what we came up with. We came up with these little take and make bags is what we called them, take and make kits. So we would put all the supplies they would need to make the crafts into those bags. Like I said, the crafts would coincide with like a theme. And then I would find some online components that would match the theme, and then we would send an email containing all of that information at the beginning of the week. So essentially what they patrons would be receiving is a kit if they chose to come pick it up, in addition to an email with some online resources pertaining to that theme. So, and then I would also find a story within the library that fit the theme, and then I would record myself reading it to the children, and then they could watch that if they chose to through the link provided to them in the email. So you can move on to the next slide. So the themes of the programs are listed here. So the first week was Indigenous Ways of Knowing. The second week was Under the Sea. The third week was TD Summer Fun, which was sponsored by TD. Then we had Writing is Fun, Canada at the Olympics, Science Rules, and then the next week is all about the environment, and the one after that that hasn't happened yet is Pets Rock. And those were the themes, so we can move to the next slide. So this, I chose to highlight 3 programs that were largely successful and that were the most interactive out of all of the programs. Not to say that one was more interactive than the other, but these are the ones that seem to get the most engagement with what we provided. So on the left there is a picture of what the sheet would look like inside those bags that you saw in the first slide. So this was the one for Indigenous Ways of Knowing. This week we invited a local Indigenous artist to come do a little virtual spiel. So he actually recorded a YouTube video. So it was Kristen Dennis. I don't know if anybody is familiar with him, but he's a good friend of mine. So he was kind enough to donate some of his time to us. So he makes flutes for a living. It's a large part of his income. He goes around to the Avon-Maitland District school boards and kind of does a presentation on how to make a flute, the importance of a Native American flute. And he also talked about a Native creation story. So he did all of that, and then I took some of the stuff that I've learned at school to adapt some sort of like craft component as well. So we had a wampum dedication string, a rain stick, and a talking stick, and all those supplies were included in their take and make bags. And then there was an instructional video that was sent to them via email that they could follow along to make those crafts with, in addition to a story. Yeah, and then what's not featured here is the backside of these sheets had some like word activities. So there would be like a word search, and there would also be book recommendations if they liked the story that I read that week. So that was the first one. We can move to the next slide. Then this was the Under the Sea theme. This one went over extremely well, swimmingly well. That's a little pun for all of you. I think we had about 35 registrations for this week, I think, which was the most we had. So usually we tried to keep registrations to 30 per branch, and then that was kind of how we would go about it. So this one had like a deep sea learning component. There was a read aloud, and the crafts kids seemed to really, really enjoy them. We had like a seahorse, like Mod Podge kind of tissue paper craft that could like hang in the window. We had a jellyfish craft that also kind of would hang in the window. And then this one was everyone's favorite. They like got to etch their own bookmark and kind of do their own design. So that's all listed there. And then as well as all the resources that were included in the email. And we can move to the next slide. This one was probably my favorite program we had this summer. It was called Writing is Fun, and this program taught children all about how to write a letter, how to address an envelope, how to send mail. And in the bag was included a letter writing materials. So we actually partnered with Correspondence Nursing Home. So all the kids got supplies to practice the letter, and then they would write one to a resident at Correspondence Care, and it was all kept anonymously. So they also had the supplies to make 2 sun catchers, one for themselves and then one for a resident at the nursing home. And this one got a lot of positive feedback too. So once they were finished writing their little letter, they would just put it in our book drop, and then it would come to me, and then I will deliver all of that stuff to Correspondence Care. We also had people come into the library and tell me that their kids that participated in this program actually gave their letters to their own grandparents. So it was really nice to kind of have that interactive component with them. So we can move to the next slide. So this is just an example of some of the stuff I received at the library from this program. So on the right is some of the little postcard letters, and then on the left is one of the sun catchers I received. We can go to the next slide. So because we had so much registration for a couple of the programs, we actually had to kind of on the fly come up with some other ones for kids that didn't get to register on time, or I guess missed that window of registration, or the program was too full. So the 2 we came up with was Jingle Bell July, and we're having a virtual games night if we get enough registrants tomorrow night. So Jingle Bell July was kind of just like a Christmas in July. There was a virtual component for this one, meaning we met with them virtually, kind of as we are right now, and we played games live, synchronously. So that was super fun, and that was the only program we had all summer with a synchronous component. So that was really, really fun, went over super well, and we played games with the kids that attended, which was amazing. And games night will be very similar, except that one is targeted towards an older audience, so we're asking ages 13 and up. We can move to the next slide. We also had TD Summer Readings Club Story Walk. So TD donated a story that was kind of put on like little Bristol boards that we could peg throughout the park. So we did it in Atwood and in Listowel, and it got a lot of positive engagement on social media. It's hard to say how many people went because it was up for 8 hours and I wasn't standing there counting people as they walked through, but I do know that it did get amazing engagement on social media, which is a good indication that it did go over pretty well. So we can move to the next slide. So yeah, I guess the next thing to talk about is kind of the feedback I received through the summer. So there was no shortage of positive feedback in regards to all of the program weekly, but especially the Under the Sea theme. Like I said, people really seemed to like that one for whatever reason. Maybe it was just the timing. On average, we had about 25 registrations per week in Listowel. I think we had in total all summer about 10 in Atwood, and we didn't get any in Moncton, but it went over really well in Listowel. And we would have probably give or take 4 kits at the end of the week that kind of went unaccounted for, but that's to be expected, especially considering an in-person year, we would have people that wouldn't show up. So I think 4 is actually a pretty good number. I was pretty happy with that. So you can move to the next slide. So now would be the time if you have any questions for me or anything you kind of want to go over or anything you're interested in. I would be happy to answer those questions now. Otherwise, I'm finished. That's all I have to say. So I'll just kind of open up the floor and you can ask away.
Well, first of all, Alicia, before anybody asks any questions, I'd like to thank you. It was exciting to see. It's nice to see that we can engage our children in so many other ways when they're not able to access our facilities as they have in the past. So thank you so much. And also for the Indigenous component, which is so important these days. It's nice to see that incorporated into it. Anyone else? Comments or questions to Alicia?
Actually, I would like to make a comment and also add my thanks to Alish. I'm a former school principal, so I really appreciated the engaging topics you chose to, support the kids and their learning and their enjoyment this summer. And I'm really, really proud of how many you did engage. It sounds like you had lots of registration, so that's really super to hear. And keep up the great work. Really proud of you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you again for attending the meeting. We as a board always enjoy hearing what is happening within our library. I know we often hear it through Ellen and reflection in our board meetings, but it's really nice to see what's actually going on. So congratulations, and we hope to see more in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was awesome to be here and to have the opportunity to do all this work for the library this summer. It was super fun.
Thank you. Good night now.
Good job.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be moving on to section 8 of our agenda, which is the financial report. I'll be looking at 8.1, the accounts payable. We're looking at the accounts payable from the period of June 2nd, 2091 to July 8th, 2001. Any questions in regards to the accounts payable?
Terry, I had a question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Leanne.
And I can't remember where it is on here, but I'm sure maybe Ellen can find it quicker. It is about the security costs was it Whiteman or Mornington? I can't remember. Oh, Brant. It was Brant.
Yeah.
Grant.
And it's page 24. Is that pretty typical, those costs? I guess it's not page 24. I forget where it was, but is it pretty typical, that amount to be spent towards that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we had a bit of a variance on the one. I think it was the July 8th statements. We do have monthly costs for Brant as they monitor the listable site 24/7. We do have that security system. But we did have a few anomalies where we had staff coming in and we had to get new swipe tabs to get into the building. Some of those permissions, and the listable system is an old system, so that actually requires them to come on site, which always incurs a cost. So some of those abnormal costs are having to have them come on site to put new people into the system.
So would that account for that $2,847 line there?
So that line, that 2,000 is usually the municipal costs, and we pay what's underneath it as part of our costs, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions of Ellen in regards to accounts payable?
Oh, I had one, Terry. The boom lift rental, what was that for?
We have had a window that has continuously been leaking with all the heavy rains, sometimes very violently leaking. So that was them trying to figure out some solution more outside as high as they could go that way. It's an ongoing issue, but it looks like we're kind of getting to the bottom of it now based on that investigation piece.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, we'll need a motion to receive and pay out the accounts payable from June 2nd till July 21st of 2021. So would somebody like to present a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Matt, seconder?
I'll second it.
Thanks, John. All in, say yes if you approve.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to the next is 8.11, and it is our half-year budget review. If you've had an opportunity, it is our budget from the the 31st of December to June 30th. It breaks down what we have paid out at this point and what we have left in our budget. I've gone through it and I met with Ellen. We discussed a few of the line items, but if you have any questions in regards to any of the half year accounts, please bring them forward.
Through you, Terry, I have a question.
Yes.
It looks like, and this is pretty consistent with most departments, so it's not just the library, but I'm just noticing that you're underspent so far for this time of the year.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Yes. And Ellen and I actually did talk about that today, that at this point we're in very good shape, if you want to call it that. To project where we will be at the end of the year is kind of like using an oracle and trying to figure out for sure if everything will continue at the same rate it has been now. But based off of our figures that we have presently, we will end with a surplus. That's a possibility, and it's a good possibility. The only real cost overrun we had was one line in North Perth, Listowel. It was our part-time employment. We were over $6,691, but then there is a rationale why that line item is over. That is where Ellen's salary is being drawn from, that line item. So that accounts for that overage. So it is within our expectations of the budget. So any other questions?
Can I just have a secondary one to that, Terry?
Sure, go ahead.
I noticed when we took a look at the financial reports for 2020, the library was also underspent. And so it's just something to think about. When we're underspent and yet we're asked to provide more funding, it's kind of a weird thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
And so it's not just the capital work in terms of the library that was understandable, because we know that, I know the whole story about difficulty with getting contractors, but when I took a look at the report from last year, we were even underspent in terms of resources. So that's concerning too, because the money's there, it really should be spent. And so just something to think about, because we still have time left. We still have from now until the end of the year to kind of, manage those funds. But it's kind of, it's kind of hard to ask for more money or more funding when we're not spending it.
Okay. Ellen, did you want to respond to that?
Were there any specific lines that you were concerned about, Leanne?
Not really. I'm not concerned about lines at the moment. I would just advise, just think about making sure that any lines that are making purchases for resources, things like that they're spent, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
because in the past, last year, I noticed that wasn't the case. And so this could become more and more of a problem at all government levels when we're not, spending. I mean, it's always good never to overspend, right? We always strive for that. But at the same time, you still need to strive to spend right as close as you can to what's budgeted, because otherwise that's taxpayer money that has been allocated for, these purposes. And we continue to ask for we often increase our taxes. And when we do that, we're asking the public to continue to give more. And that's hard. Over time, it can be hard to continue to ask for more when we're not spending the budgets we're given. Do you know what I mean? And this has become a problem at every government level. So even at school boards, the same problem has been happening. You know, schools themselves weren't spending their budgeted amounts, and those monies over time, you can claw that back. And I'm not saying we're going to claw that back, but there could be more scrutiny over how we're spending our money for the fact that we're not, right? That if we continue to have rollover, and I'm thinking more operating, right? Capital's different. I know capital, there's a lot of problems with getting contractors, that kind of thing. But it's really important that from an operating standpoint, that if there's money set for specific things, then it really should be spent for those purposes. And, you know, if there's, you know, $5,000 for magazines, then that's spent. If there's so much money for ebooks, then spend that, right? Because that's what that's allocated for from an operating standpoint. I was just giving you some, you know, rough examples there. And since you're new, I just thought I would mention that, you know, we never want to overspend, but we shouldn't be underspending either. It's that fine line of trying to meet that budget right on. And, you know, I took a look at the budget reports for all departments as a counselor last year, and even we got a mid-year report already. And it's something that's happening across our system. We have to really think about making sure that when we're allocating money, we should be using it. Okay, thanks.
Can I add something to that?
Go ahead, John.
As well? And you mentioned and brought it up, Leanne. I'm just looking at the ledger here and looking at collection materials. And Ellen, when you refer to collection materials, does that refer to books and ebooks or just books?
So the collection The collection materials are kind of everything that's physical and digital. And that's when Leanne mentioned the underspending, that's what I thought of immediately, because I had concerns there as well. It looks very underspent, but we actually contract materials from several places. And some of them we have RFPs with, where we give them a certain amount of money and they kind of ration it out for us during the year. And one of our main suppliers, there have actually been a lot of complaints lately of their service, because they have been months behind in fulfilling orders. They've assured us that in the next 2 weeks that a lot of that will be fulfilled. I'm not sure how confident I am in that messaging, but that would be the one that I had flagged as well for concern. And we have a lot back ordered that could probably help bump those lines up to fulfilling them. But it's become a real difficulty with one of our suppliers right now. But that would be the collections materials, you know, those books, magazines, CDs, DVDs, those electronic books as well.
Okay, yeah, because I noticed you spent 33,000 in the up to now, and there's 57,000 left between now and December. So that's quite a gap. That explains it to a point, I guess. So
I think we have about $12,000 outstanding with that supplier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ellen, I guess my question would be is that might be of note in terms of procurement in the future, right? If a supplier is not able to meet their, I mean, they're meeting their obligations, but not perhaps to our satisfaction, that might be something to consider in terms of supply and future procurement, right?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
If I may.
Thank you, Leanne. Shirley, I'm sorry, I thought Shirley indicated she wanted to say something.
No, it's okay. I got it.
That's fine. Go ahead, Matt.
I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that I totally understand the point of if we're allocated a budget and we don't get a huge budget at the end of the year, but even right now, like the percentage of the annual budget that is given to the North Perth Library is quite significant in the whole scheme of public libraries in all of Ontario. I do think that we need to be very cognizant of that, and I've never been a fan of, if the need is there that we need to spend it and we either have to find a better supplier, and I'll come back to that point in a second, we have to be careful how we do that, only because of public tendering. Because at the end of the day, public tendering, the lowest tender can get the bid. If not, we open ourselves up to litigation. We can't just arbitrarily give it to someone else. And you have to factor in, you have to weight the vendor anyway. But I also think that we need to, that realistically, I think the summer program, everything that we're doing is fantastic with what budget that we're given so far. And I agree to a certain extent about spending the money that we're given. But if we're having year after year rollover, and I would certainly think that 2020 and 2021 are complete anomalies as to far as to money being spent and brought in. Like they're they're totally different. I think it would be, I don't even know if you should include those numbers, but I just think we need to be careful that if we're constantly overspending for the services that were provided, of which is still being an exemplary service over the course of library in the course of Ontario, does that money still need to be requested year after year? I get that. We're going to have some very large capital expenditures coming forward. On one hand, I agree that we, if we're allotted it, we need to spend it. But on the other hand, if we're not spending it and we're still providing exemplary service at a significant tax um, commitment to the taxpayer of North Perth, then do we still need to request those funds? Like and I'm just saying that if we're spending money just for the sake of spending a byline, or if we got $10,000 to spend and we haven't spent it on widgets or whatever they happen to be, that's just, I just think that that's wasteful for taxpayer money. If it's providing a good, legitimate service to the community and accentuating and accelerating the library service, I'll be all for it. But just speaking frankly, if we're spending money for not just for the sake of maxing our budget to make sure we get the same next year, we're not doing the ratepayers a service in any way, shape, or form by providing the service that we do with the public library. Because we are going to have some expenses coming over, having a little bit in reserve. I think that that's going to come forward and possibly have us with our hat in hand and possibly quite a number of years in the future. So we need to try and bring that up that we possibly can. And capital is a different story, as Councillor Andreessen had made mention of. But I just think we need to be cautious of that. And I think it would be interesting to possibly have a 5-year report sometime in the future, only just for our overages, like total budget expenditures, very point form, basic. They don't need to be complete ledger sheets, but just to find out, okay, budget ask, budget spent, like actual budgeted numbers as compared to, and then we're all singing from the same page that if you have 2 years that are outstanding, 20 and 21, okay, they've been an anomaly for the entire planet. Supply chain and everything from soup to nuts has been totally put on its ear, and I get that. If they're the 2 anomaly years, then we'll have to wait to next year to maybe make a different justification. But I'm just like to be cautious with any money that we are spending, that it's in the right spot. If it's in the right spot, I'll be in the corner all day long. But if it's just for spending for the sake of spending, I'm not in favor of that. But I'm okay with this, and I understand the anomalies and the challenges we've had globally for the past 2 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. So what I'm hearing from the board is that we should be looking at maximizing the use of our allocation where it's appropriate. And I think that's very much the sound of what everybody's saying. I do believe, though, as Ellen and I have discussed, that these last 2 years have been exceptions. And maybe going back to 2019 to have a look at what 2019 looked at like and comparing it to these years would be helpful. Ellen and I have also discussed that we feel the board needs to be seeing the total budget on an ongoing basis. It's something we have not done on a regular basis. And Ellen and I recently were discussing that the board should be seeing this more frequently, whether it be quarterly, bi-monthly, but we need to make sure that you as the board members are seeing what the expenditures look like. And we'll try to continue to present them to you so you can see the ongoing, so we can respond to them as we see that we need to do at that time. Any other questions or comments? The budget presentation tonight, the budget review, was for your information only. It does not need a motion or anything, but is there any other comments?
I'd just like to make one more comment, kind of reiterating what I already said. I think the guts of a library are their books, ebooks, magazines, videos, materials like that. And I would just ask that if there's issues with suppliers and there's anything the board can do to explore other options, I'd certainly be happy to do that, because that's one area where we shouldn't be underspending. And I don't think it's wasted spending or overspending. I think it's, as I say, the heart and soul of a library. And if we can't use those resources appropriately, effectively, then I scratch my head a little bit, and that's not intended to be critical of anyone by any means, especially considering what you just said, Terry, about the times we've gone through, and maybe we should get the facts and compare back to 2019. But that really hits me when I see that, and I'm not blaming anyone. I think there's a reason, and we'll support Ellen in any way we can, I think, in terms of working around those issues if it's possible to work around them.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention as well, I have participated in a lot of the Ontario Library Services workshops, and this problem is not unique to North Perth Library System. This is happening in all library systems. And as a matter of fact, the seminar that's coming up that I mentioned to you, one of the issues is the changing budgets that we're all beginning to experience, and the concern about eventual clawback is one of, and Leanne mentioned that if we're not using our budgets effectively, will they begin to think that the funds are allocating, they don't need to allocate that amount of a fund base to us. So it is something that we need to consider, and maybe if we're more aware of the ongoing budget, even throughout this year, it will maybe allow us to close that gap that we've noticed in 2020. Well, thank you. If there's anything, anyone wishes to share anything else? I wanted to ask Nicole just a quick question. Nicole, I see on my screen the odd time a B. Weber. Has Bernice joined us?
Yes, hi.
Yes,
My
she's here.
apologies. Yes, my apologies to everyone. I'm in the middle of a field at a farm show in Alberta, and I went through 3 devices trying to connect. So if I interrupted anything, I'm really sorry about that.
No, welcome, Bernice. I wanted to make sure if you were present that you were recognized. Thank you for being with us tonight, even long distance. We appreciate it. The Friends report is normally handled by Becky. Since Becky's not present, we'll hold that, and in September when Becky returns, we'll update on the Friends of the Library. Next piece is part 10, section 10, and it's board development. I apologize, and I mentioned this to Ellen already. We know the information package you received was overwhelming. It is a large package of policies, but we felt we needed this meeting tonight because we certainly did not want to face September with all these policies plus any additional policies we faced during the accreditation process. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ellen, and she'll lead us through this process. Ellen, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you'll see the policies, the changes have been marked this time in yellow. Yellow is new, and there's cross outs where we've taken things out. And I have included the change log again. There are a lot of policies here, but most of the policies, the spirit of them are the same. So in our board procedural bylaws, a lot of it is just clarifying language and formatting changes, or sections being added because the legislation might have changed. And that's based on the Ontario Library Services examples as well as what other libraries have presented. So you can see even in that change log, you know, our board procedural bylaws, I didn't want to change much. I took some redundancies out and I reformatted some pieces. And I added a section in section 15 to reflect that we've been meeting virtually. And again, policies are kind of living documents. If we stop meeting virtually and we never do it again, we can definitely take those pieces out as we move forward. The next one is the board governance policy. That one is really important for accreditation, so I wanted to present it today. But this one, there was just redundancies in each section, in each introduction, so I almost removed a line from each one because it just had repeated itself. But the big thing here is that I rearranged this policy to go into a bit more of a flow that made sense for me and my accreditation work. But I am open to suggestions if this rearranging doesn't work for any of you. And then some of them are just formatting changes only. We adopt a lot of our municipal policies, like our procurement, our sale and disposal of land, our use of corporate resources for elections. Those are just adoption of municipal policies. Those municipal policies haven't changed since our last accreditation. And only the formatting has changed in those. There's a few I did want to focus on though. We do have a new policy, our foundational policy number 4, respecting an acknowledgement. This policy is our land acknowledgement statement, taking the lead from municipality and Councillor Andreessen, bringing forward the Avon-Maitland District School Board land acknowledgement. This is a really important policy and one I would hope we would adopt to then read that land acknowledgement statement at the beginning of each board meeting before we enter it officially. And then we do our collections policy. Again, this was just a little bit of a rearranging based on some of the requirements of accreditation. So accreditation, it's a great big spreadsheet, and you kind of have to find each little section that applies to what they're asking for. And so some of this rearranging is to just make it easier for me to find those pieces or to help those auditors be able to identify them a little bit easier. So in the collection development policy, just to note too, there is a new section 2.6, and it reflects the new foundational policy of the land acknowledgement statement, where we commit to bringing those Indigenous, learning and those authors and those voices into our collection in a conscious way, a meaningful and purposeful way.
Ellen, would you mind sharing the statement with the board?
Oh, sure. So the statement I'm proposing we adopt is that we acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous people of Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship.
Any questions in regards to the statement?
I'm just wondering, Terry, and through you, perhaps the agenda will have to be changed so that that acknowledgement statement is actually in the agenda.
That was a discussion today we had, I had with Ellen, where the placement of the statement would go. Would it follow call to order? Like we were discussing, because that is also part of our policy where things fall in terms of our agenda. So that would be a discussion we could have as a board where we want to place this item, where we want to place this statement to use on a regular basis. This statement will be also used by the library as well if they're doing workshops and anything involving our library board. So any questions or comments about it in terms of the placement in the agenda or the content of the message. And I know Ellen has taken a great deal of effort to have the content of the message vetted and checked. So I'm just going to share that with you now.
Looks good to me.
Was that you, Matt?
No.
Okay,
No, it was
sorry.
me.
That was John.
Oh, John. Sorry, I just heard a voice.
Yeah, it looks
Go
good
ahead,
to me.
John.
It looks good to me.
Okay, now we could handle this two ways. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as far as placement goes, call the meeting to order, and if the intent is to use the statement to actually initiate the meeting, call to order at 7:01 p.m. or whatever, then do the statement, and then everything after the fact, and then it's no different than how we do the council meeting, pretty much. Then I would say right front and center, once you call the meeting to order, that makes the meeting official, declare the meeting, and then carry on after that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments in regards to that? Matt, when we go to pass, we'll have to have a motion to pass this statement. We'll include in that motion its placement within the board's agenda, okay?
Sure.
Now, I don't know if everybody's had a real opportunity to read in detail all the policies that Ellen is presenting to us tonight, because they are quite detailed. When I had a discussion with Ellen, I noted that I felt that the changes that were made brought clarity in many cases, simplification, introduced the new policies that are out there. But if you have not had that opportunity to look at it as extensively, what I would suggest is we pass the Indigenous Statement as a separate motion, and then we can look at the other policies under another motion. I'm open to either way of doing it. So I turn it back to you as the board to determine what you wish there.
I agree, Terry. I think we should probably approve a motion on that Indigenous Statement and the placement of that in the agenda, and then the rest of the policies too, separate.
Okay. Is anyone else, John, you're okay if we go forward with that?
Yep.
Good. So let's do that motion now, Ellen. So we have it. It is policy 2.6, correct, Ellen?
It's foundational number 4, FN04.
Okay. So it is our Indigenous Statement. Ellen has stated the numbers. We wish to pass a motion to include the Indigenous Statement as part of our agenda, which will follow the call to order. And the Indigenous Statement, would you please read it, Ellen, so it can be a part of the record?
Sure. Let me just find it again. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous people of Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship.
Thank you, Ellen. So we need somebody there to make the motion, and we'll need a seconder, please.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Leanne. Seconder?
I'll second
Thank you,
it.
John. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Ellen, I'm going to turn it back to you because you want to lead us through additional policies that you're presenting. So go ahead.
Yes. So in our collections policy, again, that FN04 is reflected. And we have a new section 5, explain the challenging of materials. But it doesn't happen often, but we would like to be transparent in our process for people to know that process. And that was added. Going on to the next policy is the operational policy 15, exhibits and displays. That is, I didn't change much. I just kind of pushed the waiver into an appendix instead of into the body of that policy. And a few things were separated for some clarity. And then we have the other big one, though, is the unattended children's one. There was a new section added pertaining to the duty to report, and this policy has changed as well, and not policy, the act has changed, so the name has changed in between the time of the last approval and this one. So it's the Ontario Child, Youth and Family Services Act now, not just the Ontario Child and Family Services. And we've added section 3 as that duty to report. And I've added some phone numbers, so the numbers are easy and they'll be posted at the library as well. But I think that's all of them.
Any questions in regard to all the policies? I will mention the one policy that she brought forward was the policy for exhibiting artwork and creative pieces within our library. We actually wrote that policy, you'll remember, about a year and a half ago. So that policy was just added. I looked at the amendments. It was very minor to what the original policy was.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments before we move forward?
Terry, I've got a couple of things. On page 77, I just found a slight typo.
Typo?
And it's under 3A.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
3A, it says, I'll give Ellen a minute to find it.
Mm-hmm. And the collections development one.
Yeah, so it's 3A in this library. In A, it's the second line of that. The word basic should be changed to bases.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wrote that down as well.
Okay, and then that's just a typo, okay? Not a big deal. The other one is page 78. And this is not a typo, just a question I had because I was just kind of confused. So maybe you could explain it better to me. It's section 3, duty to report. Number 1 looks fine, but number 2 confused me. So what confused me was that it's around the 16 or 17-year-old who may be in need of protection about, making a report. Is that because they're older than, that's because they're not considered a child anymore? Is that why that part's in there? I just needed clarification on that.
Yeah, I think it's about around the age of consent.
Okay.
Yeah, I can double check though.
Like 16 and under, basically because they're a child, we have a duty to report, right? But then number 2 is about that kind of gray area from 16 to 17 where if you have a concern, you kind of should report. Is that the intent? I just wanted some clarification of what your thinking was there.
Yes, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's just all I wanted. I was kind of gray on that. And the other question was that completely missing? Was that not in the policy before?
So there were points where, so under section 2, responsibility of staff, that point 2, it was reworded. That's why it's all yellow and there's a point added. That's what existed before. So there was no specific thing that said duty to report.
Right.
But it was kind of implied, but I wanted it explicitly stated this time.
I have to agree. I'm really glad this is in here. It's absolutely critical. Not like we ever want to do this, okay? Like it's not, you never want to be able to, actually act on the duty to report, but in the event that something were to happen, if you didn't report, you're up to much more litigation. And yeah, I think it's wise to have this in here. So thank you for adding that.
Thank you, Leanne. Anyone else? I will mention, Leanne, you brought up a good point. One thing Ellen and I have talked about is eventually meeting and sitting down and putting this together in a very accessible way for the board members, that they have this package that is available to them at fingertip when we're present in a meeting, when you have to refer to something. And also that we should have a employee's manual that makes it equally as friendly for them to access this information when they need it. So
Thank you, Terry. I was thinking the same thing, but I thought that was already in place. So if that isn't in place, I would wholeheartedly support that and agree with that. And typically, when you do staff training, you do the staff training based on these policies, right? And based on a staff um, guidebook, I guess, or and that's really helpful because staff need training on much of this, especially even the duty to report, and what to do and what not to do, and how to handle themselves, and how to seek assistance, and that kind of thing.
I couldn't agree more with you on that, Leanne. And if you had a chance to read over the board responsibilities and board membership and board selection, um, it was interesting to take time to go through that because you realize how we have to support our new board members as they come on board, our new CEO as they come on board, and a new chair as they come on board so they know the exact policies and procedures that should be followed. So I talked to Ellen about that today and I said, that would be part of it is my responsibility as the chair of the board to make sure that when we do bring on a new board member that they go through an orientation that would be appropriate and informative. Because I shared with her, the learning curve has to be quick and there's a great deal of information to acquire when you join the board. Anyone else? I'm sorry, I can't see everybody's picture in front of me. So Matt, Shirley, Bernice, if you have any, just speak out, please.
No, I'm fine with everything. The way the policies have come forward, I'm quite okay. Go ahead, Shirley. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm good. I would really like to have a physical copy of it, though, too. I agree. That would be awesome.
Well, at our last board meeting, that was one of the things that we decided on, and we passed that when this is completed, that the board members would receive a package with this information, plus budget information. We need to build a stronger system of information over the next little while. I'd like to move forward with I'm sorry.
Just quick question. When, and I'm just curious, there's no pressure or anything, just wondering, what are the deadlines for Ellen in terms of this and for accreditation? I'm just curious, how it's going with this and whether Ellen foresees, finishing this up for the deadline. Thanks.
Yes. Ellen, I'll turn it first to you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we kind of get to set the deadline a little bit. I have it on my week this week to actually request the site inspections. So that's part of it. So whenever we get that site inspection date, that's going to be the goal that we aim for to finish up. We'll have one more chunk of policies to approve. The policy section is looking really robust, and it's probably our most complete section right now. But with the approval of the board governance and the board procedures, a whole other section can be filled. So we're gradually weaning away, and I'm taking a whole bunch of pictures to fill in other sections. So I'm hoping for mid to end November for the site inspection and also to get all of this completed as well. This is the most time-consuming piece of it, is the policies.
Right. And is that within the time frame of what's required, like to get our accreditation?
They were willing to give us more time because COVID's still happening. So they're being really lenient about those timelines because technically we were due last year, right?
Okay.
So because of COVID, they're kind of playing it really loose right now.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing with this. I know it's a lot. It is a lot. I totally get it. New position and, a lot of the writing and, pursuing this work. But to your credit, it's looking good and keep it up. It looks great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you, Ellen. Any other comments?
Yeah, Bernice here. My apologies.
Go ahead, Bernice.
I echo what Leanne had said, a tremendous amount of work, but it's great to get it restructured. And Terry, what you had said about board, in terms of bringing board members up to speed, I think that's incredibly important. And the manual also, I think, is really something that's a vital piece the employee manual is also a vital piece as well. So I appreciate that. I also want to apologize if I keep getting in and out. It's kind of hard in a field for internet consistency. So, but good work. I appreciate what Ellen is doing.
Thank you, Bernice. And at the same point, at this point, I want to let you know that we recognize that Ellen has the responsibility of the operations of the library, and she's trying to work this in. And as she has allocated approximately 20% of her time, when it comes to the manual, I have said to her we would do it in late fall after the accreditation process has completed, because I don't feel we should. Well, I don't want to overwhelm Ellen, and she has been a great working partner these last 4 months. So thank you, Ellen, for that. At this point, I'd like to ask for a motion that the policies that we have, the changes in the policies that we've presented so far be accepted as presented by Ellen. I need somebody to present that motion and a seconder.
I'll make
I
the
made
motion.
the motion. Oh, and I'll second
John,
it.
John's presenting it and Bernice is seconding it. All in favor of the policy changes?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. The motion has passed. Thank you, Ellen, for your work. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Let's move on to library updates, section 11.
Okay, so we're going to jump into the COVID update. So when we had met last, we've gone through step 2 and step 3 of Ontario's opening plan. So where we're at now is that people are welcome to be in the building with no time limit other than on computers, which was typical from before COVID. And we have a capacity limit in our spaces that hasn't really been a problem. I would like to point out, though, that our patrons have been very respectful of our rules. We haven't had any conflict about masking or any of those type of issues. And we're providing services where we can. Staff wear safety goggles to minimize risk exposure, as well as masks at this time. And you'll see in Sherry's report, we're just reporting on June here. There's a few, it outlines our window problem. We had some condensation problems with all of the humidity in several of our branches that we're sorting out. That branch security piece is in there as well. You can see in Atwood there was nothing to report. Sorry, I had gone into the branch update. And in Moncton, there was another sealer put on the epoxy floor just to make it last a little bit longer. And Ailish, she did a really good job presenting what was going on, but there was, you know, in June, we did do that Teddy Bear Day. We participated as part of the community. We did a Pride event with the Avon-Maitland District School Board Foundation for Education, where we helped distribute chalk for kids to kind of celebrate Pride that way. And they were running a contest, and we had, I don't know if you walked around the swell, there were a few little chalk, a few families participating in that chalk exercise. And we participated and helped with Atwood's Canada Day presentation. But that's kind of the branch update. You'll see in some of the stats in June, we were still closed really for the public entry. You'll see when we get to present July and August that, you know, the stats are really going up in these months. We'll jump to our hub update. This one's just really quick. We have started to meet again with the architect and the stakeholders. There have been a few preliminary meetings. Bernice and Terry have been able to attend, as has Sherry as staff member, but also those organizations who have submitted interest in participating in that project. And those meetings continue as the work with the architect continues. And the van update. So the van update is kind of our PCIN update. That's our biggest activity right now. It was flagged for us by our driver that getting in and out of the van was difficult, and there was a worry about strain and falls. So as of last week, we've gotten a second step added, and it was within our budget to do those kind of additions because it was flagged as a health and safety issue. But I think those are all of our library updates as they stand today.
Thank you, Ellen. Ellen, I just wanted to add in regards to the hub update. During our June meeting, it was proposed that we send a letter to the council just showing our support
Carrie?
of the hub. Oh, right.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
So that letter was sent, and that's all I'm going to say about that. We'll move on to other business, and it's the strategic plan renewal.
So in your packages, I've given you the strategic plan for 2018 to 2021. What I'm asking today from the board is that we renew this plan. It expires this year, but I don't think we have the capacity to do that work to create a new plan by the end of the year. And it was only a 3-year time span. And in that 3-year time span, we were almost wholly in COVID. So it feels like it was a plan that was created with thought and time that we never really got to do anything with. So my ask this tonight is that we renew it to 2022, the end of 2022, and early next year we start on that work to create a new plan.
Questions or comments?
I agree with that.
Thanks, Matt.
Bernice here. I agree with it as well because, yeah, we have to put a whole lot of thinking into that because of what we experienced and what we have experienced.
Thank you, Bernice. Ellen and I have talked about it, and we respect the strategic plan that is here, but we also said what would be nice to support it with, it would be some working documents, some directions. How are we going to achieve these? What is the plan, and where are we going? How are we going to achieve what we want in this, setting targets and goals? So I support the idea of delaying it or extending it or renewing it for this year. Well, we'll need a motion that we extend the strategic plan into 2022 and begin the process of developing a new strategic plan during that year. Do I have somebody to present that motion?
Bernice here. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Bernice. Seconder? Thank you, Shirley. All in favor of extending the strategic plan into 2022? Thank you. Ellen, I'll turn it back to you for the fine-free discussion.
Okay. So it was my understanding that before I joined the North Perth Public Library, that fine-free was a discussion with Sherry in her role as she was acting CEO. And I just want to make sure that we're not forgetting about it as budget is coming up soon. And I wanted to make sure that I bring the information to the board in September that answers questions or concerns that you might have preemptively, because the budget will be just around the corner at that point. I already have some information presented by the PCIN that I have, and we're going to do some analysis on what we have budgeted, what we've gained, what we've collected, and things like that as we go forward. But I wanted to make sure that if you did have any concerns or questions, that we can address them in September with the data we bring.
Any questions or comments in regards to the fine-free policy, potential policy? Since there's no questions, Ellen, certainly we look forward to hearing more about it as we move into our September meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. That concludes our other business. There is no in-camera session, as I mentioned earlier, so we'll be moving to adjournment at this time. The time is 8:10, so a motion to adjourn the meeting. John makes a motion that we adjourn the meeting at 8:10.
I'll second that.
And all in favor? And I remind everybody that the next meeting will be Tuesday, September 14th at at 7 p.m. And the location and format hopefully will be different than it is currently. But we'll wait until municipality presents their guidelines. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Bernice, I would just like to say that you're outstanding in your field.
Yes, and I just want to. Sorry, I just want to. If I
Nicole,
did
are we offline?